Hello and welcome painters to another painting competition judging video presented by Nick at Gameforge. For some of you who may not know me, I'm Kris, and I'll be having a look through your entries in this recent painting event. As I look through the images provided to me for this video, I can say I'm thoroughly impressed with all the entries here. Must be something in the water there, as I can see quite a bit of talent here. Alright, enough jibber jabber for me, let's dive into the entries. Let's start in descending order, starting with entry 11 and work our way up. The first model we're going to look at is this sculpt that I'm not familiar with. I really like the high key aspect of this piece. The choice of color on the main figure is really good in that it's not bogged down with too many colors competing for the viewer's attention. The look on the cloth is really good as it feels like it flows in comparison to the armor, which feels like shiny reflective armor. The non-metallic metal effect on the armor is well done in a high-key fashion. The attention paid on the face and hair is just wonderful, and the character feels angelic in this entry. Now, due to the high-key nature of the armor, I feel like it could have benefited from a bit more contrast, meaning the highlights could have been brought up a bit brighter and the shadows pushed a little darker in some key spots. We are only talking a smidge brighter and darker. As we venture into the base, I feel a bit of a disconnect. The red used, is it blood or is it ambient lighting? If it is ambient lighting, then it would have been better to have some of that reflected in the armor of the main figure. If it is blood, then it feels a bit too bright as it competes with the main colors of the figure. Also, wouldn't blood be splattered on a spear? Overall, a really wonderfully painted piece, and I'm sure the artist is pestered all the time for advice. And rightly so. Next, we take a look at an Imperial Knight. The first thing that jumps out at me is the mood created in this entry. Very grim dark. The use of shade and grime on the armor as well as the treatment on the base all convey a blasted, war-torn battlefield. I like the use of color and the application of decals on the model. Well done on the transfers, as I know a lot of people struggle in their application on surfaces. I like the attention to what I imagine was a clean application of the base coat on the model, as even though the grime, I can see the areas were cleanly picked out. The soot and grime really adds to the viewing of this model, but something takes me out of this. It does feel a bit heavy-handed in places, whereas a bit more control and forethought might have prevailed in this case. Sometimes less is more, as the adage goes. On the upper carapace, it feels very heavy and takes away from the grime on the feet. I think the idea could have been better served if the feet were heavy with soot and dirt and simple streaks and such on the upper carapace. Overall, a really moody piece, and I like that in an entry. I like it when models stay within a theme. Good job. Our next entry is a sculpt that I have no idea where it comes from, and it doesn't matter because the paint job here is impressive to say the least. The first thing that jumps out at me is the use of color here on the skin and hair. The use of color here is excellent as the eye is immediately drawn to the face by the effective use of the hair framing that face. The use of color is used to good effect, creating a good balance throughout the sculpt. I can tell a lot of love and time went into this entry, and it pays off as there is a lot to unpack here. The dramatic use of the highlight placement is fantastic as it creates atmosphere around the model. The effective use of the reflected light on the axe head and tusk is a wonderful touch as well. The addition of the created texture in the axe handle and leather is great as it further serves to invite the viewer to inspect further into the paint job. The base is wonderful as I can see the reflected light in places as well. Speaking of the reflected blue light, I kind of would like to have seen a bit more care in it, as it feels like a single layer was applied and feels like it could have been better served by creating a gradient throughout it. Also, the use of the blue in the highlights of the skin are a little inconsistent in their usage. The right bicep is bathed in blue, yet wouldn't the hand holding the axe have a similar intensity as the bicep? Overall, very impressive work here, and I imagine this artist always impresses people with their latest work. I could go on and on about this entry, but we have more to get to. Look what we have here with this entry. I am immediately greeted by a familiar style of which I wholeheartedly approve of. The first thing I notice with this entry is the beloved style in which it is painted. I also really like the effective conversion of the Stormcast Eternal body with 40k doodads. This model fits right into the grimdark of Warhammer 40,000, and that will always score points with me. I do enjoy the use of color in this piece as it is subtle and the effective use of red in the tiniest amount of blue. I do wish the artist spent a little more time on the color transitions and creating deliberate gradients in the shadows and such. The use of dry brushing is put to good use, but I caution those employing this technique to use it carefully. Meaning 1 or 2 layers of dry brushing to catch edges and such, but trying to build up from really dark tones can cause the final result to look chalky. I would also advise many aspiring painters to not rely on shade washes to achieve all your shadows, but that comes with time. Taken as a whole, this piece is really awesome, and the tone and style it tells the viewer is undeniable. Excellent work. With the next entry, it scores some quick points with me simply because it is a Nurgle model. I like the overall presentation of the model and the various effects and such going on with it. It sticks with the theme of the army, and the use of weathering is effective with many of the elements happening on this kit. The application of color is good, as I see paint in areas I assume it should be. Not sure I say clean and Nurgle in the same sentence. The use of verdigris in parts is good, and the use of red in such tiny amounts is especially effective. Where it gets really fun is the insects on the back, and the use of the color metallic conveys the plague coming forth from that cloud. I can almost hear the bugs. The rust streaks leave me wanting a bit more depth, in that I would have liked more definition on them and a gradient of a darker brown orange to a lighter tone. In some places, the sepia tone feels a bit rushed and not fully realized. In the armor section, it looks like it suffers from a similar situation of relying on wash to achieve all the tones to create shadows. Again, this is a wonderful paint job, and I'm sure this artist will really be something in the future as long as they continue to improve and master their materials. Good job. Our next entry is this interesting looking model I'm not familiar with. What I like about this piece is that I can see there was an idea the painter wanted to accomplish and some interesting use of materials. I like the use of natural material in the model, and the inclusion of the custom base is a nice touch. The areas of the fur and flesh is also another indicator that the painter had a vision to what they wanted to create. It is a scary little monster here. Looking at the application of paint on the face would tell me that this person is relatively new to mini painting. It is a good effort. I think this piece would be a little more complete if the teeth and other details were painted. Also, getting used to the idea of thinning the color down and applying a few layers would elevate this model a little further. I can see this person going further in the future, and all they have to do is keep painting. Good job. This next entry immediately jumped out of the screen when I first saw the photos. There is a lot to like about this model. First thing I'll talk about is the use of color. The predominantly blue skin and scales that transition into purple, then the light off-white hue are really well done. The choice of green to help the eye move about the troll is a good choice, as the eye naturally follows the troll's eyes, then to the goblin, then to the belt, quickly to the base, and then the axe head, and back to the troll's face. Very effective. The warmer elements, such as the loincloth and the axe handle, keep the model from feeling too cold. It feels like a good balance of color. Now the nitpickiness. I'm drawn out of the experience as the eye catches some of the mold lines and gaps. I think the eye could have used more of that shadow value around the eye to help create more contrast. Some elements of the paintwork feel like they could have gone a bit further in the highlights and such, looking at the goblin's skin and the leather bits. Overall, this is a fantastic paint job and probably looks wonderful in person. Again, the choice of colors is great. Absolutely fantastic work. Next up, we have a Griffin and Swordsman to have a look at. First thing I'll say is that I like all the elements are painted and good coverage on the Griffin. I see varying tones in the feathers of the wings, and I like that, but the areas that look like they're highlighted look like it was paint pulled from the surface. If it felt a bit more deliberate, I would have to give a golf clap for being clever and efficient with the paint. But it feels a bit random and feels that the paint was rubbing off during the painting process. With the solid base coat that was achieved, I would like to have seen some depth created by a shade or something. The swordsman is painted well, and I like that the artist painted the eyes and the face tattoo on the figure. The cloak is a bit concerning as the paint looks a little heavy and is not covering all the area. This is a good effort, and I think in the future for something like this, some time spent in creating a base for them to exist together would have been a good choice. Overall, I think this is a solid effort from this painter, and they have demonstrated good control of keeping the paint to the areas that they intended to cover, and the next step is creating more depth in details. Good job. Here we have an Orc Stompa and an impressive entry to be sure. I like the color scheme chosen here as they are not usually seen on Orc models, and I like that. I like that the colors chosen are repeated around the model and keep a consistent feeling across the model. With the blue and purple elements of the scheme, I think it could have also been used on other areas of the model like the glyphs and the head, like the jaw plate and so on. I think with ambitious projects like this one does have to allow for time constraints. Taking the time to prep and clean the model as well as focusing in on details and giving them the proper amount of time to render them properly. What I mean by this is I would like to have seen more time spent on the Orc and Gobbo and painted these details a little further as they are key to the viewing experience. Overall, a solid effort, and I feel like if this painter had more time, we would have been treated to something really spectacular. Next, we have a Stormcast Relic Bearer, or something like that. Overall, I like this entry as the armor is bright and has a nice bold color elements to counterbalance that. I really like the color transition on the hammer, as well as the work done on the hourglass. I do enjoy the base as it really adds to the whole vibe and the usage of metallics. I would like to have a bit more attention paid to the highlighting of some of the areas and working a bit deeper into the shadows on some of the silver bits. I also think the scroll work could have been toned down a little bit, knocking a bit of that saturation out of that. It pulls a bit of the attention away from the silver. I would also caution against relying on shade washes to achieve your shadow values on a model. Again, very solid painting, and I'm sure in person this looks fantastic, as I can see the gloss varnish on the model, which in my opinion is good for making metallics sparkle. Good job. With our final entry, we have a look at another model trying to score extra points with me. Must know I likes me some Nurgle. There's a lot to like here, from the treatment of the flesh to the weapons. The colors used are really fun, and one of my favorite combinations, the light green with the purple light magenta. I really enjoy the level of contrast on the model from the bright greenish value to the dark shadows, which look to fall to a dark purple. On the weapons, the non-metallic metal effect on true metallic surface is always fun. I see that a lot of time and love went into this entry. I would like to have seen more attention paid to the face of the demon by bringing a bit more highlights and intensity to the eyes. The bottom lip brings you there, but it lacks a payoff, so to speak. The same can be said for the Nurglings. I also feel that the various teeth on the model could have had a bit more whiteness to make them stand out a bit more. I enjoy the application of the highlights on the model, kind of a crosshatch stippling. Again, so much here to like. I'm sure the artist would have liked more time with this piece, and maybe in the future they will. Fantastic painting here. I swear I'm not biased. After all that, it is time to find out who the winner is of this event. This is not an easy task, the gravity of which is not lost on me. This is a tough one as there is really no clear winning entry, and for me to find the answer, I have to take a very close look at the technical ability. Who has shown me the most mastery? But before I get to who the overall winner is, I would like to say something to all of you who participated in this event, hosted by Nick at Gameforge. Even though there is only one winner, you should not lose heart over the results, especially those of you who are relatively new to this miniature painting. Don't see this as a defeat, but a stepping stone to success. You all have demonstrated that you are willing and wanting to become more effective painters, and this is simply a step in the right direction. Keep painting and always be willing to learn. That goes for all of you. It is a mantra that I live by. Always be learning. Okay, enough playing around. Who is our winner overall? It's entry number 9, John Hunt with the Cyclops sculpt, whatever it is. It was a hard decision, but the work I saw in this entry showed the most mastery of paint and brush. John displayed various technique in this entry, from glazing and cross-hatching to name a few things that I can see in this entry. The use of color was also key in this winning piece, as there is a lot to look at once your eye is initially invited to have a gander at the paint job. The additional texture and free-handed elements were also factors in this decision. So congratulations to John and all of you who are participated in this event. I look forward to seeing more from all of you and hope that many of you continue on this fun journey of the ancient art of applying pigment to surface, otherwise known as painting. I want to thank Nick at Gameforge for inviting me to be the judge in this event, and I would happily do it again. Take care of your brushes, and they will take care of you. Okay, enough celebrating. Get back to painting.